Morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Ng with the California Energy Commission. And first of all, thanks to Rachel for inviting me here today to kind of give some state perspective on microgrids, which has been definitely a very interesting topic from the state level. And I'm happy here to kind of talk about our perspective. So just quick rundown of kind of what I'm going to be covering today. Just start off with some high-level policy context at the state level. So much of what we do is driven by policy. The meat of the presentation is kind of just going to be about kind of what is microgrid. Microgrid kind of lay out some common denominators, and then go over some of the benefits and some of the challenges that at the state level we're seeing about wider deployment of microgrids. And I'm going to end with some examples of some CEC-funded microgrids that we have here in the Bay Area. So to start off, as I mentioned, so much of what we do at the state is driven by policy from legislature and the governor. The two primary ones that we've kind of recently had is SB 350 and SB 32, which are very ambitious goals that set up a real mile marker in the year 2030. So SB 350 sets up doubling energy efficiency savings, as well as increasing the RPS to 50%, and SB 32 sets a goal of 40% GHG reductions below 1990 levels. So this is the mile marker that has been set for us, and to accomplish these goals, we're really going to need a lot of technology innovations to accomplish them. So speaking of technology, we're kind of in the middle of a transformation with the way just energy works here. We always often talk about the new grid versus the old grid. With the old grid, but this very hierarchical, linear kind of system where energy is generated at a power plant really far away, transported hundreds of miles, and then used on site, where now we have distributed generation, on-site generation, and two-way generation flows. And then so it's just becoming a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting, which is good for greening the grid, but it also introduces a lot of challenges integrating those different resources here too. And then so kind of microgrids kind of fall into the middle of that. So the Energy Commission, along with the Public Utilities Commission and the California Independent System Operator, the ISO, has been developing a roadmap for microgrid commercialization over the last 18 months or so. The kind of goal of the microgrid roadmap is to really offer up a high-level strategy and guidance to the three agencies so that they could coordinate deployment of these technologies, as well as just kind of inform the public about what this technology is and what are the best strategies to get these deployed out in the market. Currently, this is actually in its final stage, where it's in the final stages of review at the three agencies. So we're actually really hoping to get this the final report out soon. So the last bit there, April, May, we're looking to release this. So, but the rest of my presentation is kind of give you guys a little preview of what are the items discussed in the roadmap. So starting off a little bit, what is a microgrid, just so that we're all talking about the same thing. There's the definition on the screen. The really key the key components of a microgrid are that you connect load with your distributed energy resources, your technology, and that it is says they're clearly defined electrical boundaries. This is a really key component in that you have to define a set of load to define what your microgrid encounters or encompasses, I should say. The various technologies are integrated into a single controllable entity, and it has the ability to island. So these are kind of like the key features of a microgrid. The key components of a microgrid are kind of boiled down into four components. You have your load, you have your generation, you have your storage, and all of that is combined and controlled as a single entity with the controller. This is just software, and it has the ability to interact with the grid, which it most often will do, but it also has the ability to operate independently from the grid in the event that there's some disruption on the grid. And I'll be talking a little bit more about kind of each individual component there. So what are the benefits of why do we care about microgrids? There's kind of four general main benefits that microgrids offer beyond just the kind of general suite of technologies. First is that it allows an end user to integrate a lot of different technologies into a single system. Second is that resilience and reliability. This has been kind of a really attractive proposition for a lot of folks thinking about microgrids, in the face of kind of natural disasters or things like that. Microgrids can provide kind of broader support to the larger grid as a whole, and some on-site savings, energy savings for the actual user. So I'll be talking a little bit more detail about each individual kind of component. So these are the three components, and earlier, I talked about the three components, and that was simplification, because if you think about each of these components, there's actually not three components, but there's potentially a dozen technologies that make up those three components. So between your load, between your generation, and between your storage, you can have a very, very wide variety of technologies. With load, your whole host of energy efficiency technologies, your lighting, HVAC, your plug loads, all kind of tied together, increasing proliferation of Internet of Things connectivity with demand response, combined with building energy management systems. So that's your load. Generation, we speak mostly about renewable generation, and even within that, even though PV is really the most popular choice, depending on where the site is actually located, some other resources might be available to you as well. And with storage, again, lithium ion has been the really leader in battery technology, mostly driven by kind of the electric vehicle market really coming on. But there's different technologies available for storage as well that each offer kind of pros and cons depending on the technology that you're choosing. And then so a microgrid allows the host site to integrate all of these technologies into one single controllable entity, which has a lot of benefits, because then you can control your generation, you can control your demand, and you can use that storage to kind of smooth out those two. And being able to control those is going to be really critical when I talk about some of the other benefits later on. For resilience and reliability, this is, I think, pretty self-explanatory, but again, that ability to island from the grid is really attractive to a lot of folks, especially in the event of natural disasters. We've seen, really devastating wildfires, both in Northern and Southern California in this last year. In New York, after Superstorm Sandy, New York got really interested in microgrids after that storm, because they felt a lot of pain kind of going through those events without reliable electricity. A lot of communities that we've seen choosing to look at microgrids has prioritized critical facilities as kind of the first point of deployment for microgrids. Makes sense. So these are your fire stations, your hospitals. These are some of the facilities that you really want to be able to operate in terms of in the event of a disaster or something like that. The duration of the ability to island is really going to depend on the capabilities of your microgrid. So it's going to depend on how much generation you have on site, as well as how much storage and the load. But again, if it's controllable, you can kind of play with the different aspects of it, right? If you can control your load, you can drop maybe your HVAC load or your lighting load, for example, and then that can increase the duration of your storage, which can, again, increase kind of the duration of your island. So again, that controllability is really key. So microgrids can also support the grid. So this one kind of takes a little bit of explaining. As California, excuse me, has seen more and more renewables come online, the ISO has noticed a kind of interesting way in terms of just how demand for energy has been developing. So this chart here is from the ISO. They model a typical spring day, and the line shows demand for energy from conventional sources. So hydropower, natural gas, or imported power. So essentially demand without variable resources like wind and solar. So you can see pretty level demand from midnight to about 6 a.m., about 7 or 8. Sun starts to rise, PV generation starts coming on. The demand for energy from conventional sources starts to dip because there's renewable coming online. And as you can see, there's different lines there. So as you see, as the years have gone by, the dip in demand for energy has gotten lower and lower in the middle of the day. But what happens at around like 4 to 7 p.m. is that the sun sets, PV generation starts shutting down, but that coincides with a lot of people going home and using more energy. So what you end up having is this huge ramp in a very short amount of time. I don't know if you can see this, but in February 2016, they had a huge a recorded ramp of almost 11,000 megawatts over 3 hours. And so the ISO, whose responsibility it is to ensure that supply and demand of energy is matched at all times throughout the day, this is a big problem for them. And as renewable generation continues to come online, that tranche in the middle is going to get deeper, which means that ramp is going to get steeper. This is a duck curve for those who are familiar with it. And so this presents a really big challenge. We want to increase renewables, we want to increase all these technologies to meet our climate goals, but it introduces a lot of variability and a lot of potential instability to the grid. But microgrids can help with this because, again, if you have a single controllable entity with a variety of resources, it gives the ISO a tool that they could potentially tap into to help smooth out some of these curves. So if you have your storage, you can use some of that midday generation that might otherwise be curtailed or wasted, and hopefully smooth out that ramp in the afternoon when the solar PV generation starts to go offline, just as an example. Again, with demand response and load control, you can kind of, either shift the curve or change it fundamentally so that, you avoid steep ramps such as this. And the last kind of major benefit is pretty straightforward. It's an economic benefit in that, similar with kind of solar PV on your roof, there is some economic benefit to generating some on-site energy in that you save costs on your energy bills. Now, this is kind of the more least defined benefit, just because there's a lot of revenue streams that aren't necessarily standardized or widely adopted for microgrids. So while this is a benefit, there's definitely a lot of opportunity to kind of expand the economic benefits for microgrids. So some of the challenges that microgrids are facing are kind of, I put them into two buckets, technical and economic. For technical, it's really about standardization of both the design and the operation of microgrids. Oftentimes, the microgrids that the CEC has funded, they're one-off designs. They're pretty expensive because they have to site the technologies to the actual locations. And so it's a custom design. And even if the technology components are very expensive, it takes a lot of time and effort to design it, to fit a specific site. And so if we could standardize that through software modeling, for example, that can help with wider deployment, just makes it easier to plan for these things. Also standardizing the functions of a microgrid. I talked about having the ability to help out with the grid and interface with the ISO, but even those functions and what a microgrid is technically capable of doing is not well standardized as well. The last point, cybersecurity, I actually haven't talked about, but it's kind of in the background of a lot of microgrid discussions, in that all the pieces of the microgrid, for it to function optimally, need to be continuously talking to each other. So the generation needs to talk to the load, needs to talk to the storage, all controlled by the central controller. So you have all this data flowing around, and it presents a potential cybersecurity risk as these things get more widely deployed, especially if you link them to a critical facility. The CEC has some discussions with microgrids deployed on military bases, and cybersecurity is a really huge kind of concern for them. It's kind of preventing them from fully embracing it, and so that will be an issue going forward. Some of the economic challenges, again, it just revolves around cost. At the end of the day, as of right now, they're still really expensive to put in. The Energy Commission, we provide grants to help fund some lessons learned and some case studies to help lower those costs, but as it stands, they're still really expensive. So some of the challenges going forward is, better understandable and better clear business cases and revenue streams so that it makes good business sense to install a microgrid. So that is something kind of to be developed. How to value reliability and resiliency. This has been a huge topic in a lot of discussions that I've had, in that a lot of communities are really attracted to the idea of being able to island, but in reality, you're probably going to be connected to the grid like 98, 99% of the time. But when it's that 1% and you really need it, it's really valuable. But how do you incorporate that value and that service that it provides into the cost of the microgrid? It's not really well defined right now. Some departing and standby load charges, these kind of utility charges that a customer might incur if they install a microgrid, again, kind of just adds to the financial variability. And the last, owner-operator model has been a really interesting area for us to examine, in that, if you have a microgrid on a single site with a single owner, it's not so big of a deal, but some of the microgrid demonstrations we've seen are residential. And so you have maybe a city block with 20 or so residents, individual homeowners. How do you get that group of people to come together and decide, yeah, we want to do a microgrid? And who owns that? Who's going to operate it? Who's going to do the maintenance on it? And so those are some of the questions that are remaining to be determined. So going forward, some of the things that the CEC is working on is we're funding a lot of demonstrations of microgrids. The idea there is that we're trying to get these deployed in real world situations and collect data, get case studies, and learn from them. That's really kind of the bottom line there. We're hoping to demonstrate different use cases, demonstrate the technical capabilities, how well they respond to demand signals from the ISO, how well they're able to actually operate as that balancing kind of resource for the grid, and what type of revenue streams that can be developed. For the PUC and the ISO, it's really about kind of figuring out how they fit into a larger system, to the larger grid. As microgrids hopefully become more prevalent, it offers a lot of opportunity to integrate them, but again, there needs to be a careful and kind of methodical plan going forward with those. And also with the PUC's ability to regulate tariffs, establishing clear revenue streams is a key component for how the PUC can promote some of the developments. So the last little bit, I want to just show some examples of some microgrid demonstrations that the CEC has funded in the Bay Area. Just as a quick background, the Energy Commission runs a R&D program. There's an electric side and a natural gas side. So the electric side is called the Electric Program Investment Charge. It's about $162 million a year program. The CEC administers 80% of that. The IOUs administer the other 20%. And we fund applied research and development, technology demonstration and deployment, and market facilitation projects. The ultimate goal is to get innovative technologies out into the market so that they can make an impact on our climate goals. In 2014, the EPIC program did its first large-scale microgrid solicitation, $26 million available for funding. We funded 10 projects. And again, the goal was to demonstrate full-scale microgrids for demonstration. So there's 3 in the Bay Area out of the 10. This one is Richmond is located in Richmond, California. It's on a Kaiser Permanente hospital. Again, a critical facility that the community wanted to prioritize. Kind of some stats about what the technical kind of characteristics of the system are right there. Next one is in Fremont. This is actually 3 microgrids deployed on 3 fire stations throughout the city. Again, kind of with that theme of wanting to prioritize some critical facilities that they wanted to demonstrate these on. And then the third one out of this first solicitation was in Livermore, which this one's installed at a community college over there. Our next set of projects, I'm actually not going to talk too much about because the other presenters are grant recipients, so they're going to have a lot more detail about these. But this one was a solicitation we released in 2015. This one wasn't necessarily focused on microgrids themselves. It's more about community scale development and working with local governments to improve planning and permitting processes. But a lot of the projects kind of chose to go the microgrid route as they developed their projects. We funded 12 projects out of this one. This was a 2-phase competition. The phase 1 was kind of a planning grant to work with local governments, again, to help them kind of how do they conceptualize and plan for these developments. That one is actually coming to an end in the next several months. And phase 2 is going to fund a subset of phase 1 winners to actually build out and demonstrate the full-scale demonstration of the plans that they developed in phase 1. Again, you'll hear more about those in a little bit. And just most recently, we just wrapped up our second large-scale microgrid solicitation, this time for $44 million. This one really focused on some of the standardization aspects. We really wanted the applicants to come and give us examples of how to standardize configuration so that they could be replicable, as well as business models that could be replicable. These are just getting off the ground, so I don't have any pictures of them, but there's 3 of them that are going to be deployed out here in the Bay Area: Fremont, Dublin, and Sonoma. Actually, there's a 4th one. There's one in San Jose that I forgot to put there. So kind of high-level takeaways, microgrids have a lot to offer in terms of benefits. They can integrate multiple DERs. They can help balance the grid with variable resources, resiliency and reliability they can provide, as well as some economic benefits. But there are both technical and economic challenges that are kind of to be determined that need some further research before they get ready for wider deployment. That's it. Thank you.